inclusion of all students benefit my child? How do we get more funding into our SUSD classrooms? Is there enough money in the budget for my school? What is the difference between a bond and an override? Why should I even care? What do I do if my child is being bullied? What do I do if my child is the bully? Thank you for being here and stepping back in to work together to find the answers to these questions and many more over the course of the year. Before I continue and tell you what we have planned, I want to introduce some extremely hardworking people who've worked all summer long and are part of the 2019-2020 Executive Board. So Emmy Cardella, if you could stand up and introduce yourself. I can't see you, but that's okay.
So I'm Emmy Cardella. My oldest just started at Chaparral, and then I have kids at Cheyenne. We've been at Cheyenne. This is my 10th year there. I am the treasurer for the board. I am also the co-chair for the outreach committee, which is just kind of helping to share activities that all the schools are doing, and then also being the point of contact for the school representatives. And I grew up in Scottsdale. I'm a Coronado grad, and my parents both worked in the district, so I have a lot of history with SUSD. And next is Megan Prince.
You want to come in?
Oh, sure.
It's not really fair because Emmy didn't, but.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Megan Prince. I am the co-secretary for SPC, and I have kids at Navajo Elementary. And
And you're co-chair of communications.
co-chair of communications. Thank you.
And Brian King. Where's Brian?
From here, okay?
Yeah, your mom.
Brian King, I have 3 daughters at Anasazi. They're 3rd, 1st, and pre-K, and I'm doing co-secretary with Megan and co-outreach with Emmy. So.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
I'm Karen Gifford. My daughter's in 4th grade at Kiva, and I am serving this year as the VP of Programming, so I'll be working with volunteers who are interested in that committee to put on events like our monthly meeting and also some special interest events during the school year as well. And I also, I think that's it. I've won committee this year.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kamarish. I have a 3rd grade son at Sequoia. I have an 8th grader at Jones Gordon who was previously at Cocoa Pop. And I am VP with Karen Gifford, and I'm also chair of the advocacy committee.
My name is Laura Palace. I have 3 kids attending Laguna Elementary School, and I'm the president of SPC. Last year was an incredible year as SPC restructured and reformed. This year, we're committed to moving forward even more to engage and empower all parents and families in SUSD. For those of you who are new, I'm going to do a short refresher. So SPC is an Arizona nonprofit. It's a separate legal entity from SUSD. But we are recognized by SUSD as a support organization because our sole purpose is to support and advance the welfare and education of all SUSD students. We are parents and we are volunteers. We are united by our common goal, the success of all students in SUSD. So, how do we advance the welfare and education of all SUSD students? We use these committees to develop and deliver our services. This is what we do. So last year you heard issue-driven committees. This year what we have programming, outreach, advocacy, and communications. These committees continuously work with volunteers in our community on issues that are important to our students and families. In many situations, all 4 committees have a role. So how do we make sure what we do is representative of all SUSD parents? Well, that's where all of you come in. The success of the organization is dependent on our membership. We provide the platform, we facilitate the processes in which your voices can be heard, but it's up to you to use your voice and to step in. So what is the process? SPC representatives are the voice of their school communities. SPC reps are our voting body if or when controversy arises, or simply if we need to take a strong stand on an issue to advocate for all students. So beginning on September 11th, at that meeting, we will be asking our SPC reps to take a more prominent role in the first portion of our general meetings. This is why it is so important that we have 2 representatives from each school. In the coming weeks, we will be holding SPC rep informational socials to give our reps more information and an opportunity to meet each other and ask questions. Brian King and Emmy Cardella, who you met before, are the chairs of membership and outreach and will be able to answer any of your questions. I encourage you to contact them. But in addition to SPC reps, we gauge the united parent voice through our general members, previously known as committee members. We need volunteers. Volunteers drive the issues they care about through programming, outreach, advocacy, and communications. Some volunteers are advisors. They have advisory roles. They serve as subject matter experts and consultants. Some are hands-on and offer to help wherever they can and where they can and where they want. And if you don't want to volunteer, that's okay too, because we know you still have a voice and we want to hear it. So we have several channels of open communication. Our goal is to find out what is on the minds of each school parent community so we can unite them in our common purpose. So tonight is the best example of how this all works. Inclusion must be embedded in everything we do. Programming, outreach, advocacy, and communications. To do this, it means we need everyone to step in, grab a seat at the table, and start talking about how supporting each other and working together benefits each and every student in SUSD. Everyone has a role. We believe that the key to the successful outcome of the 23,000 students in 29 schools, 11 zip codes, and 5 learning communities is one united parent voice. So without further ado, I'm honored to welcome our superintendent, Dr. John Creekart, to answer questions.
I don't think I need a mic. Good evening. Thank you for coming to Scottsdale Parent Council. I am John Creekart, and in the same way that others introduce themselves, I have 3 kids, 1 who graduated from Chaparral High School. I have 6 grandchildren, 1 of whom is a 6th grader at Kokopah, and a couple others out of state. Happy to be here in my 2nd year term in Scottsdale. I think that there are some things that we are doing now that will continue to help us grow and perform at top level. Some of the things that we are most concerned with Administratively, at the beginning of the year, of course, our enrollment. We look at that every day because enrollment drives programs. More kids means more programs. We are, as of today, compared to the 8th day of the year last year, we're down 171 students. Last year overall, 40th day count, we were down 600 kids from the year before. So we believe that we're making strides. Our decline is less, and the majority of that decline is at 2 schools. So we are addressing those. There are reasons that we know why some of that is, and we've already taken some measures to change that and to help attract more kids. A couple of high schools are up dramatically in their freshman classes. That's a good thing. It means that people are coming to us by choice, and we're glad to see that. And again, more kids means more programs, more choices. So that's one of our major concerns at this time of the year, just looking at the numbers to see how that drives the budget. There are a couple of initiatives that we have started. There's one that I'm sure you're aware of because last year was a new math adoption. So the training district-wide, kindergarten through 12th grade in math, has been going on this summer and continues and will continue during the early release days. We have a couple of other smaller initiatives that I want to tell you about. One is called Science for Every Student, Every Day. That's a K-5 program where science isn't necessarily taught every day. And that doesn't mean that students will do experiments 5 days a week. It means that integrating with language arts, they will read about their science experiment. They will do math through charting, graphing it through their science experiment. So every day we will integrate science with language arts and math, as well as have a day or two of actual science with actual science experiments. So that training began just the week before school started. There we asked for, you need it? We asked for schools to volunteer to have their teachers trained, and 15 schools volunteered. There is a real need to integrate science into our curriculum. That's kind of a fallout from the standardized testing movement 20 years ago. When we put so much pressure on English, language arts, and math that science and social studies began to fall by the wayside. Science would be taught as after testing in some cases. So I believe science is part of our life and will be increasingly a part of the life of our students. Science, technology, and math especially. So we also have a couple of our schools that are trying to focus on STEM, or in our case, STEAM, adding the A for arts in there, Navajo and Laguna. And we are working with Discovery Education now to have a program whereby they are trained in STEM, working toward a STEM certification, which is a national designation, and there are no schools in this state yet with that designation. So we're hoping to move forward with that. So that's kind of a very brief overview on a couple of programs here at the beginning of the year, and a couple of things that we are working with. And so I have one question. What is your plan to reinstate full recognition and return of employee voice of the SEA, meet and confer President's release and committee set conclusions. My plan, because recognition of the SEA is a board function, my plan at this time, seeing frankly that there is not a majority of the board who would agree to do that, but my plan is to work collaboratively with the teachers. All of last year, I worked well with Chris Ambry, the president of SEA. We met on a regular basis. We developed the certified handbook, which set up the rules. It had been attempted in the past. I believe that we set up a committee that worked more collaboratively. It had SEA teachers on it. It had non-SEA teachers on it. It had administrators. It was run by our assistant superintendent for HR, Dr. Jed Bowman. They developed a process and a handbook that, by all accounts, people are very happy with. Handbooks are important because they provide rules, they provide guidelines. It's important for teachers to know what they can expect from their administrators. It's important for administrators to know what we can expect from teachers. Working conditions, rules of transfer, and this year we will be reinstituting a couple of committees with a like kind of participation of both of teachers, regardless of whether they're SEA members or not. We're talking about professional development committee, technology committee, transfer committee, and those have not been functioning in the last couple of years. So we will continue to work well with the teachers and collaborate with them and listen to their voice. And as I've said, maybe you've heard me say this before, we treat all employees as professional colleagues. And so to treat them with respect, or honor what they do on a daily basis is important, because that is what we are about. The education and the teachers are the ones who are directly responsible on a daily basis. And I respect that dearly. Any other questions?
Did you have an exact number of the most recent enrollment number? Do you have an up-to-date one? Because there was some numbers floating around that were based, I think, on synergy versus actual.
You want to know what the total number is? Or, I mean, we are down 173.
Right, I just didn't know. I mean, I know you sent us the 8 days.
And we do send that out daily.
No, I was just concerned because there was one that was floating around that was based on synergy that wasn't accurate.
So our number of students, now Mrs. Kravitz is talking about warm bodies. At this time of the year, at the beginning of the year, we have two numbers that we're looking at. One is registration, people who have registered. The other, and the more important number, is who shows up. Traditionally at the high school, and I spent pretty good time of my career, 7 years as principal at Chaparral High School. The first 2 weeks is chasing down a lot of people who just don't bother telling you that they've moved. And you depend on the school that they enrolled in to send you a records request. But if they don't start when we do, or they don't get to it right away, the first 2 weeks we're tracing those people down. So right now, our total count in the district is 22,931. That's today, warm bodies.
Including pre-K?
That is pre-K-12. Without preschool, it's 22,251. And last year, it was 22,389. So it's a flattening to some degree of what was a heavy decline for a couple of years. And I think that's a good sign. We will continue to market our schools. We will continue to try to attract kids who live in Scottsdale to return. But in this state, it's a choice state. You can go to whatever school has room for you, provide your own transportation if you're out of district, and we have to accept them if we have capacity. We are constantly watching capacity. We will be doing a capacity study in each one of the learning communities this year to make sure that we have room and to know what our limits are. It was last done in the district 5 years ago. It's time to do it again. Rooms change. Schools begin to use rooms for other purposes, and we need to know all of that and really know what our capacity is at each school, so we're doing that. Yes?
On the topic of enrollment, does the district have a means of comparing enrollment, current enrollment, and forecasting enrollment based on like just general growth within the metropolitan area?
We had, last year we had a demographic study done. Applied Economics is the company. They are the company that does demographics for school districts throughout the valley. Their information on enrollment has been, the larger the scale, the more accurate they are by individual school or individual class, not as much, but they've been really accurate over the years. We exceeded their projections for this year so far with some of these numbers that I said. I think we surprised him. We will be getting an update from him this fall, the man who runs that company, Rick Brammer. He has been doing projections in the valley for 15 to 20 years. He has great data. We keep track of our data by school, by grade level. We could probably go back if needed as far as anybody would want. We watch it closely over the more recent years to follow the recent trends as economic times have changed. This is a different time than say 2008, 2009. We do watch that. Our Director of Assessment, Cindy Bachman, also is in charge of that research function, and she maintains those records. Yes?
What do they attribute the improvements to? Are there any specific initiatives that they're connecting?
There are a couple. She asked one to attribute the improvement to. There are a couple of initiatives. One, Anasazi is up. Anasazi that adopted the pre-IB, the primary years IB program. Their numbers are up. As I said, our high school freshman classes numbers are up, and I don't know whether that is, at this time yet, we will be doing research on that, but right now we don't know whether that is people coming from charter schools or people coming from other districts. I believe it's probably some of each. There has been anecdotally from principals, there has been an increase in people coming back to us from charter schools. Those schools that were involved in a new program like Anasazi is definitely growing. Our middle schools, Kokopah, Mojave, and Arcade schools, Cheyenne and Tonalea are both full. So those are popular programs and continue to be. I would like to say, at the risk of not meeting one of our core values of being humble, I would like to say that the atmosphere around the campuses, around the district, is more positive and upbeat. We as cabinet members, for example, Dr. Sackos is here, felt right from our first welcome back, which was the Administrative Academy, had a different feel to it than it had for a while. Patty agrees, Steve agrees, other people who were there. Our welcome back rally for all teachers was an incredibly popular thing. We threw it together as a cabinet because I said we were not going to pay this year for a speaker from outside to come in. We were going to use that money on programs for kids. So the downside of that is they had us. And we, as a cabinet, followed a theme. Each had a word, starting with R. I have some very clever people on cabinet. Mine was responsiveness. We had responsibility, rigor, respect, relationships, relevance, and each cabinet member had that word and recognized some schools for that and had some short program. And in some cases, they were telling personal stories about themselves so that the teachers connected with cabinet members. This cabinet, the assistant superintendents and I, nobody's been on cabinet now for more than 1 year. This is our second year. Somebody like Dr. Sackos has been in the district for quite a while. But we're not very well known to the teachers, and we wanted to put a face to the name for people. And I've gotten more positive comments about that program than probably any other program in my 40-plus years in education. Yes, Marion?
I would just like to applaud you for that, and I love the idea that you chose specific, words for specific leaders in their communities. Because, and I know the challenge point, I saw so many people asking what a challenge point was, but if you work in the government, blah, blah, blah. That concept was a great idea. I know Amy Bolton came up with it. I applaud her for that. But I saw so many teachers pushing forward on social media about their principal and what you delivered to their principal, and that's where the pride starts. I was so excited about that, and I wasn't even at any of them. But I just thought it was such a big deal that, however the cabinet chose the name for that principal, the staff, based on what you said, believed it and thought the same thing and pushed it out there. Like, my principal won this, and it was teachers, not parents, and that makes them want to work for that leader. And acknowledging those leadership skills is very important. So I applaud you guys for doing that. You're a full captain.
After we walked in together tonight, I have nothing. Thank you very much. So my point in bringing that up was simply that we're trying to build a culture of respect through building relationships. We're trying to make sure that we recognize people for the work that they do, that it's a positive atmosphere with high expectations. I personally believe you get people to those expectations through having a positive relationship with them. And that's been the history of my career, as I said, over 40-plus years, and that has worked. And I would like to think that that is one of the things that we can attribute to the slowdown of decline. So with that, I'm getting the hook. Thank you.
If anyone has any more questions about what Dr. King is talking about, and more questions, we do have what's called a parking lot. There's an explanation on the agenda. You can write it on a Post-it note. Make sure you say to who the question is for, your email address, and we're going to try to get those questions answered for you. Someone will be in contact with you. Here's Karen.
It is now my pleasure to first introduce Margaret Cerna, who is our Executive Director of Title I, and we're just going to have her say a little bit about what that job entails.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Margaret Cerna, and talk about longevity. Let's try 21 years as principal of Taban Elementary School. And now my new position is I'm going to be working with all of the title schools. There's 9 of us. And also with the other schools, anybody that needs any type of support, resource, or help, I'm going to be a person that's added to the team to help. But before I leave, there's just a couple of things I want to say. I will be doing a presentation at another meeting on what exactly Title I is. And I'm also going to be doing a presentation on equity and equal opportunities for learning for all students. So when we do that, I hope you will be able to come. But the one thing I want to leave you with is to remember, Title I is not just about free and reduced lunch, because a lot of people think when we say fill out your free and reduced application, that it's about lunch. It's about not only nutrition, but it's also about providing services for students and providing different programs to help our at-risk students. And remember, at-risk means that you need intervention or you need acceleration. So I hope when we do the presentation that you will all be able to come. I'm stationed at Coronado. I want to be very, very close to the schools. So if I can be of any help or you have any questions, call me. But I warn you, when you call me, I'll give you a job. Yes?
Are you also handling DSEG?
No, I'm not. DSEG still falls under Cheryl Redner. And in this position as being Title I am about the operations, but Dr. Creekard has charged me with being in the classrooms, being there to support the principal. You'll probably have to leave a phone message because I'm going to be out in the schools. And if you want to join me, come on down.
The community liaisons, are they going to be put under you so that we can work with them, or how's that going to work?
No, the community liaisons are part of DSEC. But I have invited them to all of my Title I meetings as well. So if ever there's anything you need, feel free to call. We're all a team, we're going to work together. Okay? So have a good night. Thanks for your evening, and thank you for the daycare. I brought my granddaughter. Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret. And it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our guest speaker this evening. Erica Alexander Maxwell brings 25 years of experience as an educator, first as a classroom teacher, as an administrator, as an instructional coach, and as a faculty associate. She is the co-founder of Cranbox Consulting, which is a organization that fosters positive intercultural engagement, understanding, and competency. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the 2015 East Valley NAACP Education Advocacy Award. And she's a passionate advocate for kids and communities. And we really appreciate her being here tonight, donating her time to help us. And she's also shares my hometown, which is Cleveland, Ohio. She's Chandler now with her children.
Thank you so much. I'm going to elaborate. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know it's evening time, and many of you probably had a long day. My day started at 4 a.m.
Oh, my.
Yes. I'm a morning person, and I still have energy. And I appreciate you all for all you do and for being here as a community and as parents. So thank you so much. I want to first, again, thank Karen and Lara for inviting me. Again, thank you. I do have some norms that I want, and I'm going to give. Do I have a volunteer to read the norms for me? Thank you so much, Jan. If you would stand up so everyone can hear them, and just as she's saying them, if you think of anything else, please let me know.
Okay, so code of cooperation. Participate within comfort level. 30-second soapbox rule. Bring a spirit of curiosity. Avoid private conversations while someone else is speaking. Appreciate the other person's point of view. What we say here stays here. The learning rests with you. 100-mile rule, and most importantly, have fun.
Have fun. I like having fun. You're not gonna just be sitting in these seats listening to me talk. You will be up, you will be talking with each other. So any questions about any of those? Yes?
The only one that I wasn't familiar with was the 100-mile rule.
100-mile rule. Anyone know what the 100-mile rule is? For me, it needs to be about 500-mile rule. So the 100-mile rule means really whatever's on your mind, whatever you came here with, as far as things that may have happened during your day, your week, things you need to take care of, try to leave it 100 miles away and be fully present. It's just another way of saying be fully present. And as Karen knows, I am a little distracted. It's a great distraction, but I'm just a little distracted, but I have to focus here. So that's what I ask of you in this space. That was a great question. Anyone else have any questions about the norms or anything you think we should add? Because as we work together today, you will be talking, and the part about what stays here says, what is said here stays here. If it's a personal story, please make sure that it remains in this room. So if we are working together to collaborate and it's good things to share and strategies, that does not have to stay here. Yes?
Are we still videotaping this, so what stays here won't be staying?
Oh, it won't be staying. You are correct with that. Thank you for the reminder. It will stay here and on the people that are watching. So just want to make you aware of that, and thank you for bringing that up, because this is being videotaped. We know there were some conflicts with some other school events that happen, and inevitably at this time of year that happens. So we want people to have access. So the first thing I want you to do is find the person that lives the furthest from you in Scottsdale. The furthest from you. Find that person or persons. So you can be in groups of 2 or 3. That means you're gonna have to get up. You can say some cross streets. You need to be the furthest away from that person. If I could have everyone's attention. Thank you, Shannon, as well, for several reasons, for telling me my bus was on backwards. I have literally, it was right side earlier today, but I have often gone through the whole day with my shirt on inside out, and not even my kids said anything. So, all right, so we're finding the people that live the furthest away from us. Because oftentimes, where do we sit? We sit next to the people we know. Our kids go to the same school. We live in the same area. And so we have to make an extra effort to broaden our horizons, right? Because you learn and there's opportunity in that diversity as far as where we live within the Scottsdale area. So what I want you to discuss is with your partner or partners in your small group, talk about I'm gonna give you about 4 minutes, because we only have until 7:30, 4 minutes about your experience in Scottsdale. What has been your experience in the community of Scottsdale?
4 minutes gonna cover.
4 minutes. 2 lines each. 5, 4. All right, vision 1. So, anybody want to share out what your experiences have been in Scottsdale? Even tell me how long you lived in Scottsdale. Yes.
So I've been in Scottsdale for 6 years. I'm originally from the East Coast, moved to California, and then here from California. And my experience, I was saying that it was interesting coming from out of state. We moved into the Chaparral district, enrolled my kids at Chaparral school. Thought, it seems like kind of an affluent school, but as I got to know more and more of the population, my experience was that we have kids here who are struggling. We have kids that can't afford a $125 calculator, but everybody had the assumption where we are and what a lot of our student body makeup looked like and the cars in our parking lot, that everybody was just kind of rolling along. And that was interesting to me because I was coming as an outsider. And the other thing was that we had kids who had a lot of material stuff, but were struggling with other kinds of issues. They had issues where they needed support, family breakdown or whatever. So it was very interesting for me to see that kind of overlay and realize that, you know, there's not just, oh, we see that maybe some Title I schools, you know, have some needs. We have needs too, that people don't assume we have.
Thank you so much for sharing that and being transparent. Some of the key words that I heard you say were assumptions being made, struggles across the board. And so, and when you come outsider is another word I heard you say. That's just not gonna say it, so we'll get it. Outsider, right? And so I really appreciate that perspective because I was an outsider when I came into Chandler Schools from Cleveland, Ohio, 12 years ago. And there are, when you're outsiders, you do have a different perspective, right? Anyone here that has lived in Scottsdale all their lives, I'm just gonna ask. Okay, I love how you rose your hand so quickly. All right, share your experiences in Scottsdale. If you would stand up, please, just because you're so much further away. Thank you.
Doesn't make me any taller. I love Scottsdale. That's why I stayed here. I went to Supy School. It's still Supy in my heart. It's not what it's actually but I went here with my husband. We had the same experience. We grew up, we went to our home schools, our community schools. We grew up, we're still friends with our community. This is I'm such an old lady. One of our friends' mothers died. We're going on Friday to the funeral, and I'm excited. How sad is that she was 90? Oh, wow. So we can see everybody. That's my life. It's just saying. But that's what community is, and you get excited, and like I told Dr. Kay earlier that it's exciting when your community gets excited about their schools, and I see that happening. I've seen it happen like 6 times. It's exciting, then something happens in the school district that gets exciting again. Just like the president. But Scottsdale is the place to be. It always has been. People come from all over. That's my thoughts on it. What he said about the charter schools, everybody leaves, but they all come back. Because nobody wants to send their kid to a charter school that has 10 kids to graduate. They want them to experience life. They want them to experience community. I have all kinds of theories of why they leave, but they always come back. And just like home, you always want to be home. It's like comfort food. Scottsdale is like comfort food. Sometimes it's good.
That's our new logo.
And many times it's sprinkles. I'm like waiting, I can't wait to, I love you guys, but I'm like, I gotta get there before it closes tonight.
I went to school in Scottsdale and none of my 4 kids are married, so I'm just saying, I'll be here forever. I love it.
So we have 2 different perspectives, right? Because you were here all your life. We have someone that's been here for 6 years? 6 years. Anyone been here for about 10 years or 15 years? I want to hear from you. Let's go up here to the front.
Oh, me?
Oh, right here, Amanda. Okay. Amanda, stand up for us, please.
I'm pretty short already.
I like it because it makes me feel
Hi
taller.
guys, I'm Amanda. I'm actually from here, but I am from Central Phoenix. So 2 totally different atmospheres, in my opinion. I grew up, I went to Sunny Slope High School, so that's a very diverse area. So north of Dunlap, you have kids on, food stamps and everything, and then south of Dunlap, you have the kids off of Central Avenue who have the $1 million+ homes. And we all went to school together, and I loved the diversity. I loved how much that was. I moved up here with my husband 13 years ago. I love it. The diversity is not as it was there. And my husband wanted to live up here because, as he says, it's not a pocket community like it is kind of up down there. And it was great for kids. It's great to raise our children in there, but I do feel we're lacking. So as her and I were just talking, my son, he's almost 6 years old. He doesn't get it yet, but I'm really trying to get him involved in donating and volunteering and doing all those things so that he sees a different life. Because I'm in Desert Canyon. I live in McDowell Mountain. We are a very small, tight-knit community, and you don't have to leave. You can stay there. So Scottsdale is great. It has a lot of opportunity, but it's just a very different view than from when I grew up in Central Phoenix.
Okay, all right, so you have a diverse perspective, and one of the words that you said was opportunity, right? And I appreciate that word, because you're saying you came from a diverse place, and now it is not very diverse. And as I was looking at information regarding Scottsdale, does anyone know anything about the demographic makeup as far as ethnicity in Scottsdale? Yes. Thank you so much for sharing too.
Want the actual numbers?
Hey, if you got the actual numbers, yes, I want the actual numbers.
13% Latino.
Okay.
Hispanic, 4% African American, about 7 to 8% Asian, 4 or 5% Native American, and the rest Caucasian.
Okay. So overwhelmingly Caucasian, right? And the percentage was even greater than I had even imagined. So when we think about diversity, we use that word a lot. We're talking about our schools, our communities reflecting our schools, because our school is part of the community, right? And so we have perceptions about that. There are perceptions about Scottsdale that are probably not true. They're stereotypes. So when we talk about some of the perceptions, I want you to write some of those down on your sticky note. So I have a couple of, they won't stay because it's just so darn hot. I'm gonna put this on the door. What is your perspective of Scottsdale and the school community? It could be the city Scottsdale and or the community, okay? And so a perspective is a point of view where, what are your perceptions? What have you interpreted about Scottsdale and Scottsdale schools through awareness? Okay, so there are two different things, and use the sticky notes. It's anonymous. It's anonymous. Perceptions and then perspectives. And I just put a little note underneath. And I think I'm gonna put this one over here, and it should stick. And as you do this, this is, right, this is famous. I still haven't, I think I've only been in here once. And I love hamburgers. This is just the aerial view. We have a picture of Chaparral High School. We have Old Town Scottsdale, and we have the symbol of Scottsdale. So based on some of those pictures, what are your perceptions and perspectives? What are your perspectives and perceptions of Scottsdale, in other words, its schools, the community? Yes. So again, when we talk about perception, what's your interpretation of Scottsdale schools? Based on your awareness and experiences, right? Then when we talk about perspectives, what is your point of view? What is your point of view of the school district? I want community and schools, because they're connected, right? The schools are a part of the community is part of the school. There's no right or wrong answer, there really is not. And so when you're done, and you can discuss it with your group, and just write words, phrases, a sentence down on your stickies, and then go to either one. And then we're going to start talking about it and really unpacking what does this mean for our community and our schools as we think about the changes that are occurring in society. Seeing as most of you all are finished, you might be thinking, where are we going with this? We're going somewhere with this. And we have 30 minutes to try to get there, or at least to the tip of the iceberg. So when we talk about perceptions, perspectives, they don't always align, do they? But one thing about perceptions are people's reality. Whether it's the truth or not, it's their reality. So my kids are both in high school. I have 2 teenagers. Prayer is needed more than ever. Just not a good idea to be like in your 40s and have teenagers. And so I have a 15-year-old, and my son will be 18 in November, and he's a senior. So the high school that they attend in Chandler, the perception is that it is a ghetto school. So that's the term that's utilized many times. So that's the perception. People's perceptions are many times reality, right? Even though it's a top school in the state. The perspective, because that's the point of view that I have, is that it's the top high school in the state. I recommend it to everybody. I tell people, educators send their kids there. So I'm using that as an example to see how our perceptions and perspectives don't always align. And they're not always the truth. And many times it keeps people from experiencing something different because the perception can be negative of a particular school. And somebody asks, should it be school or the city? There are perceptions and perspectives. And so I'm just gonna look at some of these. And so I'm gonna start with perception. Over here, thank you. And one of the things that I see that is a common theme when we talk about perceptions for Scottsdale, and we're talking about cities and schools, is affluence. Affluence. And what do we associate affluence with? Money. What else? What are some other words? Opportunity. Access. Connections. What else? Everything's just falling off the list. Privilege. Thank you. Power. So when people that do not live in the community of Scottsdale have these ideas or have these thoughts and voice them about Scottsdale, what is your response? What is your response? Yes.
I have a little bit different perspective.
Okay.
I live in South Scottsdale, and that's where all of our Title I schools are. So, but I'm also a real estate agent, so I understand the structure of how the city is built as I help clients. And there's some truth to that. You know, we look at the way that money breaks down in this state, and a lot of it happens to power in this Scottsdale, you know, Scottsdale Paradise Valley, kind of right in this like little area. It's not the only places, but there's a huge sort of pockets of it. But at the same time, in South Scottsdale, you know, my boys, as we were talking about diversity earlier, they're minority white in my school. We are majority Hispanic and Latino. And when I didn't necessarily know that going in. Oak chose our home school, and I find it important to choose home school at all times. I liked it. It's powerful for me because I know that my boys are going to come with some privilege of being white males in our community, and for them to be able to experience not being the majority and to live in this different place is very different. And right now, we're being combined with another school, officially, unofficially, as they're trying to close down our home school, or it's under threat of being closed. And there's a lot of people in our community that feel like they don't have a voice. They don't have power. I don't know what percentage of our students' parents aren't here legally. I don't know, you know, so there's a sense that in some ways our schools being driven by a lack of power, by a lack of voice, and by a lack of being able to speak
my dad, he would always say to me, he who has the money has the power, right? And so what you're saying to me, and what I hear you saying, is that at your particular school that is being threatened by being closed down, the population feels voiceless and powerless. So I am going to ask you, why do you think that is?
I think there's a lot of reasons.
Give me two main reasons.
Well, I think for me, one of the, I guess, I don't know whether it's perspective or perception, but I was asked last year to be the parent voice by Brian, and, you know, and Lara, we communicated a lot, and they said, you've never had representatives on SBC from your school, right? So I don't know, I think part of it is maybe people haven't felt like they've had the chance or the opportunities to speak up. I think they feel passionate. They just don't feel like they have the platforms.
Well, and we were just discussing that about the political representatives on the councils, and apparently there isn't a Southern Scottsdale representation, I think, politically. There's a lot of at-large members in Scottsdale that are not living in Southern Scottsdale. So, or at least that's what I learned just today from talking to someone here.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is the people that are making the decisions are not representative of Scottsdale, larger Scottsdale, just pockets of Scottsdale. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I heard.
And I just always want to make sure.
Yeah.
So that's important, right? That's an important part. So when we are looking at the structures and the systems that create the issues that we have, the resegregation of schools, which is happening all across the country at an alarming rate, we have to think about who's represented. Who are we saying are going to be our voices if we're not our voices? So this is from the website for the schools. The core purpose of the schools are to ensure all individual learners reach their full potential. Who's all?
Every single student.
Every single student?
Yep, no
Are you
matter-
sure?
Mhm.
No.
No.
That's what our goal is.
That's what the goal is. Now, and I'm going to say this that I didn't say at the beginning. I do not live in Scottsdale. I am an outsider. I am not here to judge anyone in this community, anyone in the school district, but we have to have these deep conversations if we want change in systems, in a voice. Because do you think that if this school was in a different place, North Scottsdale, and it was in danger of closing, would people feel less empowered or not empowered as they do at the school that's located in South Scottsdale? What are your thoughts? And I heard a no here when we said all.
That's me.
All. So yes.
We're not.
Thank you for being patient.
No problem.
Ed.
Yes, I've been a Scottsdale resident for almost 40 plus years. So when I spoke to my seatmate over here, she's a new person. She has, fresh eyes, outsider, so. What I could say for that parent over there, where I can almost guarantee there have a student Yavapai. What happened to my school when it was closed, and this is what pains me, is they had a meeting in our cafeteria, and you had, our school is a majority Hispanic, okay? So when people say, oh, Scottsdale's white, it's like, yeah, come to our schools. That's not the case. So the board came in at the time. How many of those board members said, because I sat next to them and said, wow, this is the first time I've been here? All of them. How many of the administration never visited the place? All of them. When you had parents who were speaking in Spanish, they said they would risk their lives to rebuild the school. I doubt you'd find anyone in North Scottsdale saying, I'm going to rebuild your school. They'll say, I'll pay for someone to rebuild their school, but I wouldn't do it myself. So what I've found over these decades of living here, and especially having 6 children, so I've seen this, I call it toxic nostalgia, or I think they call it restorative nostalgia. People like remembering the way it should be. It's like, oh, Scottsdale's a top school, etc. So they put on blinders. And I constantly fight. You can ask Dr. Kikard and board members. I will send out my acid-tongue emails because I'm saying, look, we need representation and we need people who can listen to what we have, because this all learners doesn't work when we have Title I schools where you can't get this stuff. I understand and I can sympathize with the people who live in Chaparral. It's like, oh, we don't have as much as everyone else. I understand poverty knows no zip code, but I know the statistics for my zip code. 100% Title I schools, a greater percentage minority than Caucasian. But we don't have representation. We don't have people who understand us. And when I mean us, I mean, when you have representatives who don't even speak the language of the majority of students, it's very difficult. Not to be insensitive here, but if you were to go to a gynecologist and they're saying, you know what, we know what to do because we're men and you're a woman, and they're white affluent males. But then you're to go to the same doctor and it's someone who is a minority or it's a woman, you'd feel 2 different ways. Because it's like, okay, they can empathize with me. Maybe because they're a woman versus a man, or maybe because they're a minority versus a Caucasian, whatever else. That's the painful discussion a lot of people don't want to have. They just assume, oh, well, you know, everyone in Scottsdale is white and affluent. I was discussing with my other co-editor over here. We live less than 2 miles away. You realize that the demographics of her schools are vastly different from mine. So when I watch TED Talks and other things, you know, they're talking of rebuilding Strawberry Mansions, I think about our schools. And how many people are going to think Strawberry Mansions can occur within Scottsdale? But no one ever thinks about that. No one ever thinks about that because they live in their bubbles, like the speaker over there was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Strawberry Mansion. Can you explain Strawberry Mansion?
Yes, it's a high school. I want to call it Rita Pearson, but it's oh gosh, just another. She's a speaker. She was a principal, and she gathered up the student staff, and she said, "Look, we're no longer gonna lock doors. We're going to clean up the hallways. We're going to put up lights." Strawberry Mansions was a school. I want to say it's in Chicago.
Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, yeah.
Okay.
And basically, yeah. What her attitude was, so what, now what? It's really easy to say, well, we live in a poor section, we do this, we do that, and the other. But like I've tried to get board members and administration to realize is that good numbers mean nothing. Because if you go down there and you experience it, it's like, okay, how can we help this community overcome these disadvantages? Or how can we do this? People never get down to that level. Everyone's always up in a little helicopter. Oh, look at this view, everything looks cool because our numbers look fine. But when you get down here where the kids are, it's not fine.
So what I hear you saying is that the community, the smaller community is not connected to the larger community. It's still very based on the wealth, right? Distribution of wealth. Because if we're a community of all and we want everybody, it doesn't say if you live in this zip code, right? It doesn't say even if you're open enrollment. Does it distinguish what all is? But when it comes down to it, the young lady, what's your name?
Tia.
And what school are you at?
Well, 3 of my boys are at Yavapai and 1 is in self-contained at Oklahoma.
And so Yavapai is in danger of being closed due to population enrollment. Yes.
It's complex, but yeah, the long and short of it.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When a school is at risk of being closed, and what was the school that was closed already? Was it Kiva? What? No.
Don't start that.
No, don't start, okay. So do we only rally for those when it impacts our kids in our smaller community.
Some people.
I just want you to think about it. Because when we talk about community, communities are connected, and I live in Chandler, so Chandler is South Chandler. I live in the northernmost part of Chandler. I lived in Gilbert, and I open enrolled my kids to Chandler schools because I was an administrator in Chandler, and I knew they were great schools. But do we look at that group differently? Do we look at the group in North Scottsdale, that South Scottsdale problem? I don't have anything to do with that. If there's an issue at a school, whether it's something great going on, do we celebrate that because it's great for the district? And when it's something that only impacts a different socioeconomic part of our community, do we distance ourselves from that? And why? If we're talking about all, how are we going to get to this? It looks good on paper to ensure all individual learners reach their full potential. I saw some hands in the back. Oh, I see a lot of hands. Okay, I'm gonna go over here. Please, 30 seconds, because
30 seconds. Okay, I just want to share a perspective of, like I said, I've been here 21 years. And just to give you an example, on my very, very first day of being a Scottsdale employee as a principal, my first meeting was at the old Honolulu. Okay, and I saw the school and I thought it was similar to where I came from, the United School District. Next day, I had a meeting at Copper Ridge. I said, what the heck is going on? I couldn't believe the difference that we were all the same district. And when you saw, and I'm just talking facilities, I was shocked. And then I started looking at test scores and I looked at other things. And that's when I said, I'm staying. I'm going to stay in this district. I want to make a difference because it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to do something. So that, 30 seconds?
yes, yep, about 40, but that's great. So you stay in the Title I school, right?
Oh, yes.
So we have perceptions of Title I schools. And who's?
A plus.
Yep.
Against all odds.
Yes. Yeah, great, thank you for sharing that. I'll come up to you in the back.
Comment and question.
Yes.
Comment is that I think very rarely do individuals or organizations ever realize their purpose fully. I think we're always working toward it. And I think the fact that someone at some point put this on paper means that there's an effort. Someone is attempting to work toward that purpose, and I think that's why we're all here. So I would just share that. And then second, do you have to be invited to rally for another school? Do I come, if I come from my community of privilege, being a black woman in a white community, by the way, I just want to share that because that's a whole nother session.
Yes, let's meet over coffee.
I'll go to Sprinkles.
Oh, yes.
So am I allowed, as a Hopi parent, to come to Taban or to any other school and say, here, I'd like to give you my advisory resources or my financial resources? Or do I, as a Hopi parent, say, you know what, I'm not going to put through this tax credit campaign at my school because my school doesn't need it as much as other schools? Do I have to be invited to rally? That's my sincere question.
No, because tax credit, you tell your money where to go. Your student does not have to go to that particular school.
Oh, no, I'm fully aware.
Oh,
What I'm saying is,
it's rhetorical.
the question is sincere. I'm using tax credit as an example. Do I say to another community, school community, what have you, that I'm not a part of, do you get what I'm saying? Do I wedge myself in there without being asked?
Yes.
And he still doesn't trust me, and I'm sure I don't blame him. And he like you, we showed up and they looked at us like we were crazy. And the truth is, we do have to prove ourselves because we don't know, and we have to acknowledge that we don't know what it's like. But we are one, so we did. I think that we know we do.
And one of the things I like that you said, Lara, was We are one. It's one community. You go to school board meetings, right? There's school board meetings that are open. Go to them. And I don't know, in this particular group, hey, you assign each other. I'm going in October, I can go. It means everything. And I'm not talking about in the midst of a trial, right? I'm talking about consistent, because if you want systemic change, it has to be some strategic and consistent plans, right? We have to be intentional. You all have, it looks like a very solid group here. Leverage. We have to be allies for one another. We can't do it by ourselves, especially when we have a group saying we feel like we don't have a voice, right? So absolutely, yes, you can. You don't have to be in that particular area, in that particular community. You're in the Scottsdale community, right? Even if you don't live in the Scottsdale community, your students go to the schools in Scottsdale. You're an advocate for Scottsdale schools, the city of Scottsdale, right? That does not exclude you just because you don't live within that zip code. This is a state that has school choice, right? And so there's a blessing in that as far as I'm concerned, because then I get to choose what community that I want my students to be in, my kids to be in, where I feel they're gonna be most successful. They're at one of the most diverse high schools in the entire state. And I don't care that people perceive it to be a ghetto school. They get results. They get results. And that diversity has been opportunistic for any student that attends that school. I mean, I enjoy that school so much. When I go there, I'm like, I want to go back to high school. With my 30-year reunion coming up next month. I heard someone, oh, yes, go ahead. Thank you for that question and answer in a sense too.
It's a sincere question, so if anyone
Yes.
has some input for me,
Yes.
talk to me later.
And hopefully, you know, this is the forum in which you can say, this is going on in my school. These are some great things to celebrate. What are some things we need to consider about what's happening? And be proactive, because so many times things, by the time it gets to us, the decision's been made. I shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? Yes. Thank you for waiting patiently, Allison.
I will put a little different perspective.
Please.
Okay. And because I grew up in this district,
Yes.
in 1964 or 5, I started attending Tavon. And there was only what we would consider South Scottsdale today was Scottsdale. Those schools were built. They were built equally. The neighborhood economically was very equal. And demographics started to change, I'm gonna guess, in the 70s and then in the 80s when new schools were built. So the perspective is, if you did go to Tavon, that was built in 1958, and you went to Copper Ridge when it was built in the 1980s, they just would be different. Now that is not an excuse for not having quality of programming or facilities that shouldn't be upgraded. But that is, we can't forget the history here either, right? And it makes it, when you start talking, somebody could leave this room and think, oh, the school district didn't care at all or put any money into these other schools, when they did. But there is a history and growth happened. I will also say, 10 years ago, coming from one of the more northern elementary schools, I did not have a voice. And I thought I was pretty loud, because I'm not afraid to stand up and do something and say something. But I found out I didn't have any influence, any power, couldn't make any changes. And I happened to be a white woman of privilege living on that more northern boundary. So I experienced the same thing you have, Edmund, which is why I stepped up to be on the governing board, to try to give everybody a voice and try to empower the parents to step up, because we do need to do it as a group, but I think that it's also that as individuals, because we all have individual experiences, we need to do it. We need to get
the administration to start listening better. And I'm hopeful that we will. And that takes time because it's been a culture of that, in my just opinion, and it's only one person because I know somebody else might have a different experience, that they listen to them, but that wasn't happening. And so I will intentionally, hopefully strategically, continue to try that because that's all you have. So that's just a little different perspective.
Thank you, Allison. And yes, historically, thank you for sharing that historical piece of the school district and that particular school. And we need you to continue to advocate and through your work and your voice. It's imperative, right? And one voice and many voices really can make a difference. And you have to believe that. And I believe that every one of you has that attitude or you wouldn't be sitting here. We have to start somewhere, but we have to confront the perceptions, right? We have to confront what is and what we want to be for the future, because in this state, in 2030, it's gonna be majority minority, right? So the school that we are talking about now, that's majority minority, it's going to be the entire state, and it's happening rapidly. The data that I always see, the years they give, they're always off because it's happening faster. The growth in this particular state, all over the state, I just noticed that if you just drive around any city, the growth that is happening is tremendous, So how are people that are outsiders, are they feeling welcome? How do we make them feel when we come to their schools, to their communities? How are they feeling? How are they getting along? Because if we want all, we say all, but do we really want all? We have to build a nation and a community of what I want for my child every day, for my nephews that live in Kansas City, when they go to school, every child should have. And when someone was talking about the facilities, I have worked in the Gila River community. I have worked basically A to Z as far as demographics within a city, in schools. And I have seen here the most egregious, and when I say egregious, I mean egregious, segregated schools I have ever seen. And I've been in education 26 years. To the point where I'm like, this, I can't even believe it. You know, in the 21st century, when you look at, even within the same school district as you were mentioning, you go from one north to south or east to west, and what you see is vastly different. When we're talking about resegregating schools, it's happening. We're back to almost Brown v. Board of Ed. How can that be? And when you see it, you know, you might hear about it, it impacts me, whether or not my kids go to those schools. Equity, we can't continue to talk about it. We have to do it. We have to show up. We have to advocate for what is right and equitable, not equal. So I challenge all of us to really think about this statement in the all. Do we really want it? Or is it nice to say it? Because we want to be inclusive and diverse in all those words, right? But what's happening is showing something very different. It is not showing all. There are some gaps in discipline and achievement. They're not even gaps, they're chasms, right? And it's scary to me because I think about what is happening in the landscape, not just here in Arizona. And I tell you, this week I was just saying, if I hear one more bad thing about the education in Arizona, and just when I said that yesterday, when I got into my car, they were talking about preschool and how we're at the bottom of the list in every area. Why is that? There's no excuse. There's no excuse for it. And it's happening every day. Every time I hear on the radio something negative about education. Scottsdale is a great school district. You got great things going on here. But we need to make sure great things and opportunities and access is for everybody, not just those that live in North Scottsdale. When you're facing, and I've never had to face a school closing, my kids' school, I can't imagine that. That's a part of the community. Yes, you're gonna say something else. I'm gonna let you talk because I really feel like.
I know we're like, it's like time to go.
Yes, it is.
I don't know that I have an answer for your question. Yeah. More like a question upon another question. But one of the things that you said the word ally. And I currently in my own sort of personal life, I'm actively trying to learn how to become an ally for populations that don't have a voice. And I've been trying to actively figure out what that looks like and how do I do it and how do I not impose my own beliefs on another structure because that's not being right? That's just coming in and saying this is what you need and I'm gonna do it for you, right? So my thought is this idea of like, I don't know necessarily that you always have to ask, but can I join? But maybe it's more like, what can I do to be a part of this? That everybody's welcome, but we allow ourselves to go, what do you mean? What does your school mean? Right? And I think that can apply. My friend here, she's talking about her school. Everybody thinks that her school is like, you're in this affluent area, you're this, you're that, you're the other. But yet she has competition from what is called a choice school in Scottsdale School District. It's a public school, but it's a choice school only. It's not a district school. And they're losing kids consistently to that school. So there's a whole different construct there, that there's this assumption that her school is great because it's in this gray area. They're struggling. They've also been on the list to be threatened to be closed, right? And so what can I do to be your advocate? And then she can come to me and say, what can I do to become your advocate? You know, and I think that's what it is. It's when we become allies, we just ask the question, what can we do?
Right. And parents, and I've always said this, you all are so powerful. I don't know if you realize how powerful you are. I've seen it, I know as a parent, I know as an administrator, as a teacher, a former administrator, a former teacher, you have the power to change and transform and have a voice. They listen to parents. What happens, even on the news, when parents show up in mass to a school board meeting, the news is there. Your voices, your collective voices are more powerful than you realize, and use it to be allies. I'm good, it's 7:30. Did I get through half of what? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. And it's important we have these conversations, but it has to go beyond the conversations. But one of the things I always say, we don't need another professional development. We don't need another conference. We need to act. We need to act. If we want changes, if we want to change perceptions, we have to act on things and the knowledge that we have. Knowledge is power, but if you don't act on it, it's just knowledge. Shannon.
So this is just a really quick teacher perspective. So I live in South Scottsdale, so if we had kids, they'd go to Coronado, but I teach at Arcadia, which is, you know, west central, physically actually in Phoenix, so that you have kind of an idea of where that is. And I think that as a goal, the vast majority of teachers, the vast majority of administrators, the vast majority of parents believe in this, for sure, that all individual learners reach their full potential. But from a teacher perspective, to kind of, you know, ask parents for help, it is countless times where I hear conversations between parents where, as long as it doesn't affect their kid, we want this. A lot of times I'll hear, well, you know, we're getting more diverse, but it doesn't look like our neighborhood school anymore. I've heard Arcadia called ghetto. And there's a lot of coded language that I hear from parents a lot, where I just want to say, just go ahead and say it. Just say what you really mean. Because clearly, you know, what you mean is our school is looking a lot more diverse and you're not okay with it. So I ask you and I challenge you, and I know every parent here already does this, but when you hear those conversations and parents saying, well, it's not really our neighborhood school anymore, it is. It still is, and it's only better for our diversity. It's only better for the different programs we have. It's only better for all of these things. So we love each and every one of our kids equally, and I want to be able to help each of them equally. And we try really hard, but we need parents desperately to stop those conversations if you hear them, because unless we stop them, it's just going to continue.
Because the messages you send, not just to people in Scottsdale, but outside of Scottsdale, are going to impact the perceptions. I know people, if I say I'm going to, not to eat, they always come to eat with me, but if I say, well, Casablanca's close, but I say I'm coming to Scottsdale, I have friends that say, I am not going to Scottsdale. I'm not. Because the perception is they're going to get pulled over. So how do we change those perceptions? How do we change those perceptions that may exist about the schools? Well, if you go to that southern school in the South, those are no good. And I'm not saying I heard this. Better not. But if I live in North, that doesn't mean I shouldn't care about the southern community, because it's all Scottsdale. It's all Arizona, right? It's Maricopa County. So, what I charge for you to do is come up with a plan. What's your strategy? How are we going to advocate for someone who's already basically said, we need someone to help us and to be allies so we can have a voice and at least address what's going on with our school? Or are we going to just sit here, oh, this is an okay meeting, and let it happen and read about it in the news or hear about it in the newspaper? You can do one thing. You can attend one school board meeting. Just if you went to one school board meeting a year. Principals Advisory Council. Perceptions are high school parents they don't participate. I go up to my kids' school, like the meeting's coming up in a couple weeks. I will be there in college. And my kids really do believe that. So advocate, be allies, because within the diverse group there's diversity here. There's opportunities to assist, to be allies for one another. And if we want to see change, we have to all work for it. It's not somebody else's job, it's our job, it's our responsibility. Thank you for your time. I would love to continue.